They don't teach you how to deal with beneficiary designations. They don't teach about Social Security. They don't teach you about survivor benefit. Nobody teaches this stuff. Having an advisor is great. Having the right financial advisor is better. Welcome to another episode of the Simply Retirement Podcast, where we want to educate and empower women to live your retirement on your terms. I'm your host, Eric Blake, practicing retirement planner for over 25 years, founder of Blake Wealth Management, and I would not be the man I am today without the women in my life. Joining me, as always, is Wendy McConnell. Wendy, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am good. So today's episode, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to call this, and I kind of settled on why all financial advisors are not the same. But I'm going to do my best not to throw anybody under the bus.
You could have just said why financial advisors can't go on vacation.
Right. Well, yeah, that's a whole nother topic, right? But before we get to that, I wanted to ask you a question. So what was the first thing you thought when you found out that our practice and even the podcast, as you've been my producer now for almost 3 years, was primarily focused on retirement planning for women?
Yay! Because that's so rare. So rare.
Oh, I'm glad you said that.
Okay.
Well, and it's interesting. So I wanted to share a couple of conversations that Dawn and I had. We just got back from our 30th anniversary trip in Europe, and it was amazing. And these conversations that we actually had on the trip reminded me of why retirement planning is about so much more than just investments. And unfortunately, we see some of these the bigger financial decisions that people make often come during these really difficult life transitions. Mm-hmm. And one conversation in particular that stressed the importance of not only the decisions that many women have to make after losing a husband, but truly getting effective support and guidance from the professionals around them. So just to kind of walk through our story here with this trip. So it was our 30th anniversary. We actually celebrated on June 8th, which is, as we're recording this, just a few weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. 30 years. I don't even know how am I old enough to have a 30-year marriage. I don't know how
right?
that happened.
It's crazy.
But we were on a riverboat cruise, and we went from Budapest to Amsterdam.
Wow.
And one of the cool things about a riverboat cruise is there's only about 180 passengers. So what that means, of course, is that it's one of the reasons people do this is because you actually get a chance. You're sitting with new people, you're going on these different excursions, but you're seeing the same people over and over again. And so what, of course, happens as you're eating dinner with these folks, you're eating breakfast, you're going on the excursions, you're discovering new cities, you're doing all these different things, is eventually somebody asks you, well, so what do you do?
Right.
And after many, many versions of this, of what I've been a financial advisor for I always say over 25 years, but we're kind of getting close to 30 at this point. But
oh, no.
I'm going to stick with over 25. That sounds
still accurate.
Right. But as anybody does, when somebody asks a doctor what they say, I'm a doctor or I'm an accountant. But financial advisors, we got to have these elevator pitches and we got to have all these fancy things we say. Because as soon as I say, well, I'm a financial advisor, everybody just they just turn their head and they start looking other directions and they don't want to talk to you anymore. They
don't want to talk to you? I would think that people would hit you up for free advice.
No, they think you're about to try to sell them something. That's what they think.
Okay.
So you're going to sell them an annuity. You're going to sell them something. You're going to sell them something, whatever it is that you're selling. That's what they're waiting for. So they kind of avoid you at that point. So what I settled on a couple of years ago now is I just say, my wife and I run a retirement planning firm primarily focused on women. And they immediately, whether they want to talk to a financial advisor or not, they're at least a little bit intrigued when I say that.
Okay.
Right? So I say, you can do that? Is that a thing? That's kind of the response. You can kind of see, really? But one of the really cool things about that response is so many people, especially if I'm telling a woman that, they will kind of lighten up. And just the first conversation we had with that, there actually is a couple from San Antonio, in fact. So the Texas folks, we got together the first night and she kind of shared a story about, this was she and her husband were on this trip together, but she had previously been married. That's who her children were with. But she talked about all the challenges that she went through and going through divorce, and he was doing this and had multiple mortgages on her house, all these different challenges she'd gone through. So she was so appreciative. And a lot of times that's the response we get, even if if it doesn't necessarily apply to them, they're so appreciative because so many people somewhere in their family have seen this play out where the husband's passed away It was their mom that was the widow that is now she's on her own, or she got the parents got divorced at the whole great divorce thing.
Right.
So all these different scenarios, and people are so appreciative. So that's either really you can do that. Advisors actually just specialize in working with women, or that's so valuable. And she was so appreciative of it as well, that there's somebody out there that does that just focuses on helping women navigate all these challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of the origination of this whole conversation. And there were two roommates, college roommates. Well, they're not currently roommates, but they had been college roommates several years ago. They're both now in I think they're both 60 years old, in fact. And we met them, and we had multiple meals, gone on a few different excursions. And that was one of the things that came up is, well, what do you do? And when we talked about that, what they shared was one of them they've been friends for years, and they actually don't live too far from each other. They're a couple of hours away from each other, but they'll spend time at each other's house. Great friends. They love photography. They were actually on this trip together, of course, like I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
But each of them had gone through their own big life transitions. One had been divorced recently. And one of the things she brought up, which we've covered many times on the podcast, is the whole 10-year rule around, well, if you were married for 10 years, then you got divorced, you might be eligible for a spousal benefit or ex-spousal benefit. So we kind of talked about that, and she expressed some of her concerns about 401k. And I should be really careful about giving any type of specific advice, because we don't have a relationship with them. I want to say all the different things I want to say,
right?
But I got to be careful. But it's the other friend that really drove the importance of what we do home. And again, why all financial advisors are not the same. And the reason I say that is gradually she kind of opened up some different things that she talked about. She'd only been a widow. She'd been a widow for a little over a year. So her husband passed away. She was 59 at the time. She now has turned 60. And you could see that she's still so emotionally, she's dealing with this. The emotions are still there without question, because you can see you can see from time to time how she goes from really excited and really happy with all the things they're doing. And all of a sudden you'll just kind of see this change and it didn't really last long.
Right.
But you could see there was just something different in her facial features. Just something was there that hadn't gone away.
An energy shift.
Right. And she was talking about a few different things. And for whatever reason, there's one point, and you never know why people will open up their stories to you, but it was actually just she and I at one point. Because Dawn is the social butterfly. She's the one everybody loves.
Everybody loves you too.
Yeah, but it's just different.
Yes, she talks, you don't.
I do when it's appropriate.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But for whatever reason, I was down, I'm an early riser. So I'm up at 6:00, whether it's Europe, United States, it doesn't matter where I'm at. I'm up by 6 a.m. no matter what.
Okay.
So she happened to be up early, and we're just at a different part of the ship, but we're actually in there together. And she was talking about how much she loved Dawn, my wife, right? And how fun she is and all the things and one of the things she said, I want to be the fun one again. I used to be the fun one.
Oh.
Right? So you can just see the emotions are still there, and periodically just kind of bubble up. And I said, and again, you say, you'll get there one day. It does it takes time. We deal with this. We see it a lot, but every situation is different. And again, she's still dealing with it. And the conversation about her husband would come up periodically. Hey, we used to do this, and we used to do, I got pictures, and we eventually were sharing pictures of different scenarios or different vacations. And she was doing the same, but obviously then it would come up that her husband had passed.
Right.
But transitioning a little bit more into the financial aspects, again, it kind of the way when I say, hey, we work with women, they'll open up from time to time and share some different details.
Mm-hmm.
And she talked about one of the things she said that really, it piqued my interest, but also worried me a little bit because again, we deal with this on a regular basis. But she said, well, I started my survivor benefits at 60 because his benefit was way greater than mine. So the first thing I'm thinking of is, okay, does she have a financial advisor? Did she ask her financial advisor? Because what worries me, and again, we've done episodes on this, is saying, well, okay, his was that much greater than her Social Security benefit was, she probably should have delayed that one, right? Because she kind of shared that she'd opened up, she had a pretty good working history herself. She didn't have children, so most likely she had a full work history. So as we've shared, in most cases, if you are in this situation where you're eligible for these two benefits, either a benefit on your own record or a survivor benefit, You usually want to delay the larger of the two,
Okay.
right? And so that's one of the things that pops in mind. Okay, did she have a conversation with somebody before she made this decision, or did she not even know that was an option? That it was just, okay, I'm 60, which is the earliest eligible date you can be for survivor benefits. And she just said, well, and I don't know what triggered her decision to retire. Both of them had recently retired too. So she retired in her 60s when she was 60. It's like, was that just an emotional response to, hey, I need to do just something different. So I'm just going to retire and I'm going to travel and do these things that I want to do. Again, nothing wrong with that. But some of these decisions that are interconnected that we've talked about on the podcast before with Social Security and retirement income and taxes and all these things. So that's where my mind goes, of course, is did she have a conversation with somebody before making that decision? Or was it just kind of an emotional response? I'm retiring. I need to start Social Security.
Right.
And so my concern is, did she cost herself thousands of dollars in lifetime benefits?
Did she?
Very likely, I would begin.
Oh, no.
The question is, did she know that she could have? Now, she actually does have the option to potentially switch into hers, but I don't know how much hers was. I don't know how much his was. What I do know is that by starting at 60, what she's receiving is about 28% less than what she could have received had she waited until full retirement age.
Okay.
Right? The most utilized strategy would be that, hey, we delay Social Security to 62, we start your benefit, and then we allow your survivor benefit to grow to 67, which is your full retirement age, because that maxes it out. That maxes out your lifetime benefit. Now, would it have been a situation where because she wanted to retire at 60, that maybe she couldn't have if she waited until 62? But again, just my interpretation of some of the things she said, I don't necessarily think that was the case. I think it was more just kind of an emotional response, or that's just what I should do because I'm 60 and I'm eligible. Let me start it.
Right.
And again, that's where some of the assumptions that I'm making are more just from experience and not things that she's actually said.
Mm-hmm.
But she also talked about saying, well, I have a financial advisor and I think I'm getting really good service. He has driven to meet with me 3 times since my husband's passed.
Okay.
Which that's awesome. Anytime a financial advisor will go out of their way to make sure they're there, I think that's great. But at any point, was that conversation had? Did she know she could ask this financial advisor, what should I do about Social Security? I know I'm eligible at 60. Should I start Social Security at 60? What are my options? Hi, everyone. It's Eric. Hope you're enjoying today's episode. I want to take just a quick moment to share a resource I think you'll find really valuable. If you've ever asked yourself, how much is my Social Security reduced if I file early? Or am I eligible for benefits as a spouse, surviving spouse, or even after divorce? You're not alone. That's why we created our ultimate guide to women's Social Security success. It includes 6 of our most popular Social Security guides and checklists for women. Inside, you'll find a 2026 quick reference guide with key Social Security amounts and limits to be aware of, along with 5 additional guides and checklists to help you make more informed decisions about eligibility and filing strategies. You can download it for free at womenssocialsecurityguide.com. Keep it handy wherever you may be in the decision-making process. Now, back to the episode.
Why wouldn't people, as an advisor, ask those questions? Like, is there a reason, or they're just not that great at their job?
I don't want to say, it's hard to say that they're not that great at their job. I always believe that as a financial advisor, you cannot be everything to everybody.
Okay.
There's a difference between working with folks who are in their 30s and working with somebody, in this case, who's in her late 59 and then in her transition into 60 as she's retiring. You just can't be an expert in everything. And so what my guess is, and again, I'm just going to be clear, I'm saying I'm making a guess based on my past experience of the last almost 30 years, that either she didn't know she could ask him, or this advisor didn't have the experience to say, hey, I know your husband's passed. We need to take a step back, tap the brakes a little bit before making any big decisions. Let's evaluate your options when it comes to Social Security to make sure you're making the most effective decision.
So his clientele may not primarily be retirement.
You would be very surprised, and maybe you wouldn't be surprised, about how many advisors don't really have experience with Social Security specifically.
Okay.
It is the single source of lifetime guaranteed income for most women, most people, period.
Right.
But many financial advisors don't understand it, don't understand the options themselves.
Wow. Okay.
Now, the other part to this, and this is kind of a continuation of the conversation of why I think she could have still retired at 60, even though maybe she should have delayed Social Security until 62 and started her own benefit and then switched later, is that she talked about how the husband had 5 different 401k accounts when he passed. So she felt like, and she actually made this quote of, and this is such a powerful quote. And this is what, if there's nothing else anybody takes from this episode, take this. They don't teach you this stuff. This was the exact words that came out of her mouth. They don't teach you about this stuff anywhere. They don't teach you how to deal with beneficiary designations. They don't teach about Social Security. They don't teach you about survivor, but nobody teaches this stuff.
Well, you do.
I do. I do my best at it. That's why we have this that's the whole purpose of this podcast, right? But one of the things that she's talking about how he had 5 different 401ks and she had to go to each individual employer and try to figure out get the beneficiary situation figured out and get those dollars rolled over. And again, I only assume that she rolled them into a 401k or an IRA in her name. I don't really know that for sure. But one of the things she said was also that when she retired, she rolled her 401k over. And she said it wasn't a whole lot. She'd only been at that employer for about 3 years. And like the day after she rolled it over, which is also exactly what Murphy's Law, the day after she rolled it over, the value of her accounts went down by the same amount she had rolled in. And it was like 60,000, 70,000, something like that.
What?
Now, what that tells me is there's probably a pretty sizable amount in that account between what she had received, maybe what she had on her own, and what she had inherited from her husband, right? So it's going to go down by 60 or 70,000. That's probably a pretty sizable account.
Right.
Which again tells me there's maybe a chance that she could have still retired at 60, but made a more educated decision about Social Security.
Did you give her your card?
Again, it's where's that line between, hey,
right,
I can help you, but they also have to ask for it. And again, because her interpretation of her relationship with the advisor was it was a good one. And she actually said, I can't remember if it was a sister or an aunt or somebody said the advisor was trained by her relative, whoever it was.
Oh, okay.
And so there's the family dynamic. But again, what it tells me when I brought up the idea of right from the very beginning of all financial advisors are not the same, that's what I'm talking about. And again, without necessarily, and I don't want to throw this advisor under the bus because I just don't know enough. I wasn't there. She didn't open up about it. But from my experience, this is what's going through my mind. Did she understand her Social Security options? Was it that she didn't know she could ask it? And that's where the challenge to me is either she didn't know she could ask her financial advisor or the financial advisor never approached her about it. Neither one is necessarily a great answer, but that's kind of what I feel may have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing she talked about is she hasn't really started using those dollars that she received from her husband because she was concerned about the tax implications. And she said, well, my financial advisor and my tax guy don't really talk. They don't communicate. I'm like, you need to change that. I did say that to her. So that's something you need to do something about. You need to make sure they're in communication because how can you make an informed decision, an educated decision about your retirement income if those people aren't talking to each other?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if you don't understand the tax implications, and that's one of the things we talk about a lot is the less you can pay Uncle Sam, the more either you get to spend or the more you can pass on to the people you care about. Whatever your priorities are, one of those others is still better than giving too much to Uncle Sam.
Absolutely.
Right? So that's why I talked about it. You definitely want to do something about that. Make sure they're in communication. And those are the areas where I kind of subtly say, hey, that's something that we actually do. We proactively reach out to our clients' tax advisors in some way, even if it's just providing our tax letter. Here's all the tax documents that you're going to need to help Jane and Bob fill out their tax return, those types of things. So being proactive from that standpoint. But again, we're talking about a true retirement income plan. If the tax piece is not there, that's a huge gap.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the things, ultimately, to get kind of the next level of this conversation, that's really where seeing somebody going through, still making these big financial decisions, still very much in the emotional waves of losing a husband, that's where it's such a challenging period of time. And again, you're making these big decisions all while dealing with the loss of a spouse and how do I do this? Should I do that? And I just want to encourage people to be sure you're asking for guidance and asking for advice from the right people.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it may be that she might have enough money that it maybe doesn't matter. Who knows? She may have several $1 million and she got more than she'll ever need to be able to live on.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Absolutely. But my guess is that's probably not the case. And it's where these little decisions, these small little decisions that with the right guidance can make a significant difference in the lives. And can she still take these nice trips 10 years from now or 15 years from now? Or is it going to be because, well, I made these big decisions today, that's going to impact the rest of my life over the next 10, 20, 30 years, right? And that's really where, when you're talking about, we're understanding, asking the right questions, I'm not expecting people to know the answers to the questions. I'm just hoping they can ask the right questions and ask the right people, right? Mm-hmm. We're talking about understanding, because all this stuff fits together. And that's where we talk about this puzzle, this retirement income puzzle, where all these pieces start to fit together. If you really want to have a dream retirement, you got to make sure all these pieces fit together, whether they're talking about Social Security, we're talking about taxes, just the retirement income plan itself. What happens when we go through difficult markets? How do we deal with that? All those types of challenges. And that's really where, to me, it's just doing that on your own, it makes it even more challenging. And that's really where I've said, beyond taking my response to that question, well, what do you do, just to the next level, and say, well, we run a retirement planning firm that focuses on women. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, my next response, depending on how the conversations are going, is saying, how so many women, if they've lost the average widow in the United States is 59 and a half. She was right there, right? They don't have that other person any longer to say, well, what do you think about this? Or what do you think we ought to do? What do you think about doing this? Or what do you think about that idea? What do you think about all these things? They don't have that other person to bounce those ideas off of. And that's where we want to step in and say, we want to be that trusted advisor. We're never going to replace your spouse, but when you need somebody to call, you have a question, a financial question specifically, who do I call? You always want to make sure you know who to call.
Yeah.
And I think that's really where, and again, having an advisor is great. Having the right financial advisor is better, that understands your circumstances. And I think that's really where, as far as saying, okay, where's all this going? How do we help women ask those right questions? Just a few resources before we get ready to wrap up here. Because again, if you think this episode or today's conversation resonated, I always want to make sure you've got resources. So just as an example, several episodes back, episode 94, we did 7 questions every woman should ask before hiring a financial advisor. These are the types of questions you need to be asking. What is your experience with Social Security? What is your experience with somebody who's lost a spouse? Whether it's because of divorce or being widowed or whatever reason, how do I go about doing this? The other thing that's very interesting is we did an episode 50, quite a while back, on this whole wealth transfer concept, right? It's really big in the financial services space of talking about this great wealth transfer. As baby boomers, as some of the older generations are passing assets down, women are going to benefit from this, right? Because they're the ones that are most likely going to survive the spouse. So episode 50 was exactly that. How do you navigate this landscape? How do you make better decisions? If women are going to control so much more wealth over the next few years, and it's happening now, as our practice, we're seeing it happen now. We're seeing the husband pass away and the women are now left with making all these big decisions and having sizable assets, right? Well, the IRA accounts, life insurance, whatever the source of wealth is, you've got these big decisions to make.
Yeah.
And last thing I wanted to share was the series. We did a 3-part series, Navigating Life After Loss, which is a 3-part series on what decisions should I or could I make the first week, the first month, and the first year after losing a spouse. And so again, I don't know really where I wanted this episode to go, other than to share this story and to share these real life challenges that we see women face. But maybe more importantly, what are some of the resources? How do we go about helping these women make better decisions? Whether that's finding another financial advisor or just consulting with a financial advisor, whatever that is. And we've got so many free resources we have access to as well that I'm more than happy to share if somebody's interested in learning about those. But I just want to make sure we can bring those resources to the table.
Mm-hmm. And you do a very good job of that, Eric. I may say so myself.
I greatly appreciate that. I do. So as we get ready to wrap up, again, Wendy, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. Again, it's really one of those conversations that I think has to be happen more often, just so people know there are resources. So hopefully this episode will be a resource. The additional episode that I shared could be additional resources. If you have these challenges, if you've got questions, please reach out to us. There's no obligation. We've got so many different from savvy ladies to purse strings, all these different resources that are out there to help educate women, to help you make better decisions. We just want to be a resource to do that. So as always, thank you for tuning in. Thank you again, Wendy, for joining me once again. Please be sure to follow the show so you can stay up to date on future episodes. And until next time, please remember, retirement is not the end of the road. It's the start of a new journey.
You've listened to Eric on the podcast and heard conversations about retirement income, Social Security, taxes, investing, and many of the financial and non-financial aspects that shape retirement for women. But you may still be wondering what sets Blake Wealth Management apart from other retirement planning firms. The answer is quite simple. At Blake Wealth Management, retirement planning is about more than investments. Eric's passion for helping women comes from the strong women in his own life, including being raised by a single mother and watching his grandmother navigate widowhood at just 62 years old. Those experiences continue to shape the mission behind this podcast and the work we do every day. Whether you are planning retirement with a spouse, navigating retirement on your own, or simply preparing for what may come next, the team at Blake Wealth Management is available to assist you with your retirement planning needs. Visit blakewealthmanagement.com for a free retirement assessment, or call 972-426-7237. Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analysis of Blake Wealth Management. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, their clients, or their employees. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by Blake Wealth Management or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor. Blake Wealth Management and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.